Hello and welcome to the second episode of IWLCA Weekly presented by IL Women. I'm Inside Lacrosse Women's Editor Hallie Griggs, and to kick things off this week, we're diving right into the IWLCA polls. In Division 1, it's Stony Brook in the top spot, receiving all but one first place vote. The Seawolves are trailed by number 2 Maryland, number 3 Boston College, number 4 James Madison, and number 5 North Carolina. Number 8 Penn and number 10 Loyola both enter the top 10 ranks for the first time this spring. The Quakers are undefeated at 7-0, and Loyola has rattled off 5 straight wins, 4 of which coming over a ranked opponent. High Point also enters that ranks at number 25 this week. It's number 1 Florida Southern leading the way in the IWLCA Division 2 poll. Familiar foe number 2 Adelphi trails the Mocs, and the Panthers are followed by number 3 Lindenwood, number 4 Lemoyne, and number 5 Florida Tech to round out the top 5. We'll see a number of top 25 teams battling it out this week as number 25 Assumption hosts number 10 Mercy Thursday afternoon, and number 12 Pace takes on number 4 Lemoyne in NE10 action. Weekend competition will be headlined by a clash in the Sunshine State as number 5 Florida Tech and the top-ranked Florida Southern Mocs will square off on Saturday afternoon. And in the D3 ranks, reigning champion Gettysburg still holds the top spot. The Bullets are trailed by Middlebury, Salisbury, Trinity, and York to round out the top 5, as the top 10 teams from a week ago remain the same, but we've seen shakeups in almost every spot. Number 11 Amherst is up from 14 a week ago, while number 12 Wesleyan makes the jump from 18. Meanwhile, in NAIA action, Savannah College of Art and Design holds the number 1 spot in the coach's top 10 poll. They're trailed by Cumberland's, Lawrence Tech, Siena Heights, and Kaiser to round out the top 5. The next NAIA poll will be published on Monday, March 26th. Number 1 Stony Brook improved to 7-0 in Week 6, as now only 4 teams remain undefeated in the Women's Division 1 ranks. I took a look at that and more in my Sunday post on IL Women, and to kick off Hallie Stakes for the first time this season, I'm diving right into that post with my case for High Point. A season ago, the Panthers punched their NCAA ticket with a Big South automatic bid, but it was what they did in the tournament that should have had this team on everyone's radar headed into 2018. The win marked the first NCAA tournament win in any sport for High Point, and the first win over a ranked opponent since 2012 for the Panthers. This spring, they've already taken down a pair of NCAA tournament teams from a season ago in Elon and Notre Dame, and they've hung with the heavyweights, North Carolina and James Madison, better than most this season. In terms of polls, voting, and respect, what more can this team do? Well, it's likely it'll take a win over Duke on April 9th and an undefeated stretch at that. Regardless, with the decisive win over the Irish, High Point had my vote in this week's media poll. High Point wasn't the only team making noise last week, and as I make my case for the Panthers, I'll expand that to make a case for mid-major programs, the non-traditional powers, this week as well. We often use the terms overlooked and underrated in sports journalism, but who are the teams this year that might not be getting all of the respect they deserve? James Madison is the most underrated, undefeated team in the country right now. Shelley Claes-Belkam's team is off to an 8-0 start, the best start in program history in nearly 20 years, and boasts one of the most dangerous lineups in Division I lacrosse. They're hungry, they're tested, and one thing I love most about this team is that they're incredibly veteran-heavy. Kristen Gaudian leads the Dukes with 37 points, while Elena Romsberg and Hannah Haven both have 30 on the season. One of the game's top two-way players, Haley Warden, leads the charge in the midfield. They've got options in goal and a big week coming up. With Virginia and Maryland on tap and a win over UNC already in their back pocket, the Dukes will look to continue to prove themselves in Week 7. And on the topic of big tests, another team I'll throw into this conversation is the Towson Tigers. Towson opened up its season with wins over Penn State and Georgetown and have only fallen to number 1 Stony Brook and the Cardiac Kids of Loyola, who just cracked the top 10 this week in both the IWLCA and media poll. Yet, I'm not sure people are giving Towson the credit they're due. This team boasts 7 double-digit scorers led by Emily Gillingham and Caitlin Maltabano. They'll take on Florida Wednesday afternoon in arguably their biggest opportunity game of the season. Of course, both James Madison and Towson leading the way in the CAA this spring. They'll face off on April 28th before CAA tournament play commences the following weekend, where JMU will play host. And moving on to some of the week and weekend's craziest outcomes. In some early week action, Loyola outlasted Virginia 19-18 in a barn burner, and Florida overcame a 10-2 deficit to take down Navy 19-16 in Gainesville. The Gators exploded for a 17-6 run in the game's final 37 minutes. Rookie Shannon Kavanaugh got on the board late in the second half to tie the game at 16-all. Kavanaugh then went on to tally the game winner and a pair of insurance goals to close the game with a 4-goal run of her own. Kara Trombetta held All-American Kelly Larkin to just 1 goal, in addition to causing a career-high 5 turnovers and picking up a pair of ground balls. In Pac-12 action, conference preseason number 1 USC held off a pair of conference foes in back-to-back overtime outings, running into a pair of hot goalkeepers. Against Colorado, Kaylee Huff led the women of Troy with a game-high 4 goals, as Maeve McMahon scored the game winner in overtime. Huff, whose sister Kelsey is also a freshman midfielder with the Trojans, has emerged as one of USC's biggest scoring threats in her sophomore season. Despite being outshot 31-22 on the other end of the field, Colorado sophomore Julia Lasella turned in a career day against the Trojans in goal. Her 17 saves marked the 4th straight game in which she produced at least 10 saves, and 4th game in a row she saved 50% or higher from the field. On Sunday afternoon, USC ran into an upset-minded Oregon squad in Los Angeles. Once again, it took an overtime period for USC to come out on top. Kerrigan Miller, Kaylee Huff, and Hope Anhut each posted a pair of goals to lead USC, as reigning ACC Defensive Player of the Year and Louisville transfer Brittany Reed posted 15 saves in net for the Ducks. Oregon wasn't the only upset-minded team in action on Sunday, as Temple knocked off Big East foe Denver 10-9, and Vanderbilt fell just short of Florida 11-10. And on Saturday, it took a pair of overtime periods for Navy to get past Colgate 13-12. The weekend was also filled with a number of impressive individual performances, headlined by North Carolina's Ella Hazar and Stony Brook's Kylie O'Miller. In the Heels' 18-13 win over Northwestern, Hazar became North Carolina's all-time leader in assists with 98, dropping a career and program high 8 against the Wildcats. UNC trailed the Cats at the half 8-7, but Hazar & Co. went to work in the second half, outscoring host Northwestern 11-5. Ultimately, Carolina's 5-0 run late in the game, in which Hazar dished out a pair of assists, proved too much for Northwestern to handle. 5 of Hazar's 8 assists came early in the second half of play, as she assisted 5 different Heels on the day. Hazar had a part in 3 of Katie Hoag's 4 goals. Hoag also dished out 3 assists, setting a new career high in goals, assists, and points in the Heels win. Hazar also impressed in the Heels win over Elon earlier in the week, posting a game-high 8 points on a hat trick and 5 assists. And Kylie O'Miller continued to fuel the Tewaaraton fire in Week 6 with back-to-back game-high performances against Delaware and Towson. Against the Blue Hens midweek, she posted 10 points on 6 goals and 4 assists, all of which were game highs. She followed that up with a 7-goal and an assist versus Towson on Saturday afternoon. The win pushed Stony Brook's undefeated streak to 7 consecutive games and marked the program's 5th win over a ranked opponent this spring. Joining us in the D2 ranks, it's University of Indianapolis head coach James Delaney. James, thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Of course. And, you open your season, let's bring it back to February. You open your season, strong effort against Lindenwood. Obviously, not the result you wanted, but taking a lot of confidence out of that game. How has your team built on that?
Yeah, I think, we really look forward to that moment all year. And, we did come up short. I think the score wasn't quite indicative of how competitive that game was, but we rolled out, I think it was like 13 kids, first ever UND game. We start 5 freshmen, 9 underclassmen. So it was a new experience for our young team. And we try to take the growth from that and the maturity level from that and how to handle those big games, those crunch time situations. And I think, building off that confidence of, being able to play with what's one of the best teams in the country we really just relayed that into, each week of practice and each game, and it's helped us grow each and every week. And, it was a good showing. Got to give our cap to Lindenwood. They're a fantastic program, but I think it really helps set the tone for the rest of the season for us so far.
And, obviously, taking a step back, it's a very new look game this season in the D2 and the D3 ranks. How have you seen the possession clock, the free movement, some of the other additions? How have you seen that impact the game, if at all?
Yeah, I think depth matters, and having the conditioned athletes matters. It's a very fast game. I think it really caters to the style of play that we have on offense and both defense. And I quite frankly love it. I was a big fan of it. We got to play with it a couple falls ago, scrimmaging some Division I opponents. We played again with it this fall, and it was a really smooth transition for us. I just love the speed that it brings. It was a fantastic rule change, and you got to give a lot of credit to the rules committee for coming through with that. And we love it here. We love the fast style of play, and we want to get up and down and push the tempo.
Does it change the way you approach the game, but approach game prep?
I think we put an emphasis on conditioning, but we rotate 6 middies, and we kind of change it like hockey lines. They're keeping them as fresh as possible, so that when they're in the game, they're able to get up and down and play as fast as possible. So we definitely make more subs because of it. And from an X's and O standpoint, I don't know if we've necessarily changed anything. We just try to, play within the rules and play as fast as we can, and, definitely a fun style of play.
And, last question, looking ahead, obviously heading more into the bulk of your conference slate, but what's the overall mindset as you approach, the latter half of March and head into April lacrosse?
Yeah, we're really excited for our last 11 games. The biggest thing for us is controlling what we can control and being the best version of UND that we can. So that starts with one practice at a time and one game at a time, and we're not overlooking any of the opponents in our very tough conference. And we want to just get better each and every day and put our best foot forward when it comes game time. So we're looking forward to this Sunday's tilt against Davenport. And then once that game's over, we'll worry about who's next on the schedule. But we're taking it one day at a time and one game at a time. So
awesome. Well, thanks so much. And of course, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
And now on the line, we have Gettysburg's Carroll Cantilli. Carroll, thanks so much for joining us today.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
And we had Matt Noonan on last week, and he was taking a look at this season's Division III landscape. Of course, we kick things off with our reigning champs, and you are the lone undefeated reigning champ in the country this spring. Has that been something that you and your staff talk about with your kids, defending the title at all?
Well, we've spoken about it briefly, but I think my players summed it up really well as one of their logos, or mantras, if you will, is new team, same dream. So, they know it's a whole new season, new folks coming onto the program, those that have graduated, but their dream remains the same. And like a lot of other colleges, all vying for a national championship. So sure, we talk about it because it is the overarching goal, but it's not what we focus on a daily basis.
And we actually just had UND's coach Delaney join us, and the possession clock, free movement, new to the D2 and D3 ranks this spring. Have you seen that impact the game at all?
Well, I certainly love it, and my players love it. So we're enjoying all of the new rules and the ability to kind of do what we can to keep the pace of the game at the highest and quickest level. So I think we're just seeing teams more, executing things quicker. But it's still offensive sets. We're getting plenty of time to kind of find the right looks. So I love the change, and I don't feel it's been a huge, learning curve really. People have just embraced it and are moving right along.
And your team, you're coming off a big stretch. 5 of your 4 wins thus far this spring have come over ranked opponents, all of those opponents, non-conference teams. How do you hope to carry that momentum into Centennial Conference play?
Well, sure. I mean, our goal all the time is to be better than we were yesterday and just really focus on the little things that make big things happen. And, we're excited about the non-conference schedule. We worked hard to try and get all of the, toughest teams that were available to play. And we definitely feel that that's prepped us very well for the conference play to come up. And each game has provided us with more information about who we are and where our strengths are and areas that we want to continue to develop against really good competition. So I think it can only benefit us as we move into the conference play.
And you mentioned, scheduling the best. You have a pretty big one coming up, your rematch of last year's national title game against TCNJ. Do you think that one is, one of the games in particular your girls have had scheduled on this, circled on this scheduled for a while?
I hope not. I hope they have the next one circled on their calendar and are staying right in the moment. But with that being said, I think another factor that makes the game an exciting one for us is we have a lot of family and alums that live in the New York, New Jersey area. So we usually get a really great turnout of alumni. Since they can't always make it back to our campus, we kind of meet them there. So we are learning that we're going to have a really great turnout because they know, A, it'll be a really great game, and B, that it's at close proximity to so many of our loyal followers. So I think that's exciting, the players knowing a lot of their former teammates are coming back for that game.
Absolutely. And you mentioned that next matchup, York, and then, TCNJ, but the rest of your schedule, of course, is conference play. And, what have you been seeing out of your conference this spring? What is that game prep already underway, looking ahead into April and some of the potential matchups you might face?
We've haven't had a whole lot of chance to focus on that at this time, but we know as soon as the York game is over, we open up on Saturday with Ursinus, and so we'll have done our homework. Our focus has really been on us. While we certainly have our preparation of the upcoming team, a lot of our film is on watching us and tweaking the things we're doing. But by the time we get ready to play in the conference, sure, we'll have consumed a lot of film on the opponent and be ready for it. But right now, we're really still focusing on what we're doing and how we want to tweak some of the things that we're doing.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Coach Cantelli, and best of luck to you and the team.
Thank you, and good luck with your program that you're doing. It's exciting, really awesome time for women's lacrosse.
And thanks to both Coach Delaney and Coach Cantelli for taking the time to join us today. And now over to Inside Lacrosse Editor-in-Chief Matt Kinnear with this week's IWLCA Offensive and Defensive Division 1, 2, and 3 Players of the Week.
This week's IWLCA Offensive Player of the Week is Stony Brook's Kylie O'Miller. O'Miller posted 18 points in 2 contests last week as Stony Brook remained undefeated and atop the polls. The reigning Tewaaraton finalist had 6 goals and 4 assists against Delaware, and followed that up with 7 goals and 1 assist versus Towson. She is now just 34 assists shy of the NCAA Division I career record. The Division I Defensive Player of the Week is Temple University's Marin Lowell. Lowell anchored a defensive unit that held Denver to just 9 goals in the Owls' 10-9 upset of their Big East foe. She made 12 saves, including a stop in the final 20 seconds of regulation. Lowell's 93 saves ranked second among all players in the D1 ranks this spring. Rollins College's Callie German is this week's IWLCA Division II Offensive Player of the Week. German helped Rollins go 3-0 in the week with wins over Lock Haven, Young Harris, and Alabama Huntsville. She posted 20 goals, including a pair of game winners, while dishing out 5 assists, causing 5 turnovers, and picking up 5 ground balls and 6 draws. Defensively, it's Queen's University of Charlotte's Cammie Case taking home bragging rights this week. Case picked up 14 ground balls and 6 draw controls, in addition to causing 14 turnovers in this week's stretch. And in the Division III ranks, it's St. Vincent's Maggie Nelson and DeSales' Rachel Schubrooks taking home the IWLCA Offensive and Defensive Player of the Week honors, respectively. Nelson tied a program single-game goals record with a career-high 10 including the OT winner, in St. Vincent's 15-14 win over Juniata College. The senior midi also added an assist, 5 draws, 3 calls turnovers, and a ground ball. Shoebrooks led the Bulldogs to a 2-0 week after posting 25 total saves and allowing just 8.5 goals per game in the 2 games. She recorded a record 17 saves in DeSale's 23-13 win over Gwinnett Mercy.
And another episode of IWLCA Weekly presented by IL Women in the books. Be sure to check back every Wednesday and be sure to follow us at IL Women and at IWLCA on Twitter and Instagram for updates throughout the week. See you next week.